The day I first saw you, I knew that my life was forever changed. It was love at first sight. Life was always so hard before that. And in that moment that I first saw your face, I knew that things were about to be different. It's hard to explain. If I didn't know you as well as I do now, I would have never have admitted it at the time. It was like magnetism. I was drawn to you. We bought the house at a county auction, my husband and I. We saw potential there from the moment we passed by. It was old, falling apart, abandoned for many years. On a hunch, I did a bit of research on it. The taxes hadn't been paid in a long time. The county seized it and would be selling it off with a few others whose taxes were derelict on a Thursday morning. The weather predicted sun, but that didn't happen often in winter. That Thursday, years ago now, in December, seems just like yesterday. The sky was overcast, looming and gray. There was frost on the ground, but no snow. And the sunshine that the weatherman promised never showed itself through the low-hanging clouds. But this was our first home, and we were happy. We won it for a good price. I was surprised that there weren't many buyers interested at the auction on the steps of the courthouse. Bradenville seemed like a nice enough town, and the two of us were just starting out. We were looking for something peaceful in the country. This little burb just spoke to us. Since the moment we drove past the welcome sign, we knew that this is where we belonged. The house was a mess. Dusty and full of furniture that was slowly transforming from inanimate to living possessions alive with fungus and growths of mold. For that reason, we decided we couldn't move in right away. It needed to be cleaned out. We needed to hire someone to help with the dampness of it and clear the air, and we would do that in time. But the house needed to be emptied first, and we thought it would be a good project to bond over. We booked a room in the bed and breakfast on Main Street downtown. It was called the Valiant Arms, and the place was charming in its own weird way, which didn't bother us in the slightest. Kendrick and I are not put off by a little weirdness, but the choice of decor, a medieval castle motif, was a bit out of place in the heart of this small Kentucky town. The owners were a couple named Beau and Bambi Traverse. They had no other staff. Bambi showed us to our room. It was small and held an oversized 4-poster bed that nearly filled it. Hung above the headboard was a portrait. The brushstrokes were amateur, and one of her lazy eyes seemed to be looking towards the closet, while the other stared directly into my soul and dared me to laugh. Aware that Bambi might have been the artist herself, I didn't. I thought the subject might be Marie Antoinette, or someone else historically important, but with parts of her face appearing disproportionate and slightly melted, it was hard to be certain. Kendrick and I shared a secret look that said, "Wait till she's gone," without words, and after she left the room, the two of us doubled over in quiet laughter. The Traverses were fine people, we found out, if a bit eccentric. They made a full continental breakfast for their guests each morning, and it could be enjoyed in a regal dining room, complete with faux bricks and battery-operated torches. There, at the stately dining table, one might enjoy their homemade Belgian waffles under the watchful gaze of King Henry VIII, whose poorly painted ears were 2 different sizes, but at least he didn't bother to look in 2 places at once. I found the diary behind the couch as we were carrying it out to the large dumpster we'd rented, and they delivered into the front yard for the cleanup. The diary was a nice one once, with a leather cover. It was spotted with mildew and the damp air trapped inside, and the pages were waterlogged, but the spots on the leather wiped away with a brush of my hand. We hadn't been at it for long, but I was already growing tired with the clean-out at that point, and it was just the first day. I knew that 867 Weber Street would be nice if we gave it the love it was desperately craving. Nice eventually, But for now I couldn't see it. The place looked like a dump, and I wondered if we'd made a really horrible mistake with our savings. The thought of even starting the process of cleaning it up was overwhelming. The diary gave me a little hope. It was like finding buried treasure inside a long sealed tomb. I thumbed through the pages and read those first lines. The day I first saw you, I knew my life was forever changed. Something about it seemed hopeful. I needed a little bit of hope, even if it might have been hidden in the pages of someone's private thoughts. Who knew? The rest of this could read like some sort of hopeful romance novel. I showed it to Kendrick, and he rolled his eyes. It's like buried treasure, I told him. It's probably garbage. Poorly written teenage girl shit. No, the handwriting is a little sloppy. I bet it's a man's, I told him. Besides, even if it's corny or nonsensical, it might be fun to read. Well, Will, I guess you'll keep it then, won't you? Ken said. I placed it in the box I'd begun for things we might find during the clean-out. Things that might be worth selling, things that might be worth keeping. I think I will. I'll let you know if he gets the girl in the end. Girl? Ken exclaimed with shocked sarcasm. I can't believe you, of all people, are assuming anyone in their gender or species. Maybe it was written by a fairy or a troll. Troll shaman with enhancement spec. Maybe they fell in love and had to maul them to death. I had no idea what he was talking about. My husband, ever the nerd. We spent the rest of the day moving, molding, and crumbling pressboard desks and tables outside and tipping them overhead into the large dumpster, which seemed to have known better days. It was an eyesore out front as it was. A sun-ruined blue, pitted with rust. But very soon, as it began to slowly fill, I began to feel a bit more hopeful about the place. When we returned to the bed and breakfast, we discussed the plans for the rest of the week. We decided we might be about to finish cleaning the place out in the next 2 or 3 days. Then the mold removal company would come and set about their work. We weren't sure how long that might take, but we figured on a week, and we might be able to move in before they were finished entirely. Some of the walls on the lower floor would have to go, be replaced and replastered. We could do that in time. We decided that neither of us minded living there at that point, and the work would go faster if we did. Once everything was settled and a plan was in place, we enjoyed a quick dinner with the Traverse couple and retired to our room. Kendrick has always been a sound sleeper, since the day we first began to live together. Battling with insomnia for most of my adult life, I always envied him that. Before long, he was out and snoring. When sleep wouldn't come for me, I turned on the light at the side of my bed and dug the diary out of the box we had brought back here with us. I picked up where I left off. It was like magnetism. I was drawn to you. I have a confession. I'm writing it here because I want you to know. I don't know how things got to be the way they've gotten. I think you know what I mean. I'm talking about the escalation. I don't know when it began. I don't know when I lost control. I never doubted your happiness, or my own. Not at first. Then things began to change for us. Do you know when it happened for you? I think it might have happened to both of us at once. A line of dominoes we didn't see that made everything fall apart. I think it was that new job you took. It was too stressful and you became a shell of yourself. At first, I didn't understand it. I didn't try to. I resented seeing you less and less. I tried to remind myself that you were working more hours now, that you were preoccupied. I think I blamed you when things began to fall apart. I didn't have it in me to blame myself wholly or even partially. I hadn't done anything to spoil it, to spoil us, but I hungered for you in new ways. Then I did do something. It changed me. It changed us. I think I'm different now. I started to change when I began to put myself in your shoes. You weren't here, even when you were home. Always someplace else. I just wanted to be close to you again, like we were before. I felt like a part of you was gone, and I wouldn't be able to ever find it again and revive what we shared. I guess I'm writing this more for myself than anything. But I'm writing this for you, too, even though you won't be able to read it. It's too late for that now, because you're gone, and I know that's my fault. Even after you were all gone, I could still feel you. There's a part of you inside me. I know you're still with me, but now you're gone. There's a part of me that thinks we could have made this work if I chose my actions differently. I was impulsive. I couldn't help myself. Every day I felt like I was losing you more and more. It was love at first sight, and you were blind to me, and I couldn't stand it anymore.
This was a little obsessive, but I could definitely imagine worse. I left the room to get a drink, and when I came back upstairs, I nearly jolted out of my skin. Someone was there in the darkness of our room, hovering over Kendrick while he slept. The black eyes stared through me like two dark marbles. Its face was like a disproportionate bird with a long and crooked beak. It seemed to turn to me as it hovered over him in the dark. The black glare of the eyes seemed to bore into me as soon as I entered the dark room through the doorway. I flicked on the light. At first I jumped, and then began to laugh. It was that awful painting of Marie Antoinette. There was nothing hovering over Kendrick as he slept, except that portrait on the wall. I began laughing, and Ken began to stir, but I was sure that neither my giggling or the light overhead would be enough to wake him. He was pretty much out cold. I climbed into bed, and the last thing I remember before drifting off to sleep was that Kendrick was probably right. He usually is. The diary was probably a waste of time, a melodrama that wasn't worth the read. The thing is, I've always liked a good melodrama, and I thought I'd keep going at it until I finished each and every page. But not tonight. There would be plenty of time while we stayed here at the Valiant Arms. Nights when sleep decided to evade me for longer hours. I marked the crinkled page where I ended with my finger while I searched the end table for something to place inside and hold my place among the smears of ink and water stains. There was a pad and paper there, and pulling off the top sheet, I slipped it between the fragile pages, and quickly drifted off to sleep. The night was built of strange dreams. Dreams that I'd somehow grown emaciated. Over a short span of time, I became thin and wasted and frail. My arms and legs were spindly twigs with overlarge knots of skin along the joints. Slowly, I watched myself become a sort of flightless bird. I was strange and unidentifiable, defying the order of nature, a blasphemy. I watched as my nose grew long and my chin jutted out to meet it, forming a hard and fleshy beak. My fingers elongated, ending in talons. Feathers sprouted from my palms and along the bony joints of my hand. The rest of my body followed suit. The feathers I grew were blacker than any crow's, so black that they absorbed all the light that hit me, and I became a flattened silhouette of shadow. I was a black so dark that I resembled a hole to another dimension, a bird-shaped void in reality. The light burned me when it met my downy skin. It felt like fire as the feathers sucked it in unrefracted and swallowed it entirely. I sought out the darkest place I could and built a nest where I could hide from the sun until the end of time. The last thing I remembered before I woke was removing my own eyes and placing them on the floor before me so that I could gaze up at myself, at the feathered shape of nothing I'd become. I saw myself one last time and squawked. From their place on the floor, my eyes could make out the shadow of the snout, but the pits of my empty sockets were nothing but shadows. Then, after a moment spent in consideration of my new form, expressionless, avian and black, I pecked at them where they lay on the floor with my strange dark beak. I watched as a milky fluid spurted out in a concentrated spray, absorbing into the darkness of the feathers that sprouted from my birdie face. The fluid was swallowed up by them, just as those same feathers absorbed the light. Then the world went dark. I woke after only a few hours' rest, to the rising of the sun and the cheerful morning songs of less horrifying winter birds nesting in the barren trees outside the window of our rented room.